Greetings, and thank you for joining this installment of a new model of the authentic church. As you're aware, we've been reading from the book that I'm publishing entitled The New Model of the Authentic Church. If you've missed any of the episodes, you can go on the YouTube and subscribe to A New Model of the Authentic Church and watch the introduction, which I'll explain some of the reasons why we wrote the book and some of the objectives of publishing this book. And then I get into the preface explaining what the thesis is or the paradigm that we're trying to develop in this book. And also I'll briefly describe the chapters. But I'll continue now, as I did before, with reading of chapter 1 entitled The Decline of the American Church. And I will pick up where I left off. This is chapter 1, part 2. But isn't it just young people? But it isn't just young people that are leaving the American churches. The proportion of Americans that consider themselves to be Christians has been steadily declining for many years. Back in 1990, 86% of all Americans considered themselves to be Christian. Meanwhile, the number of Americans that reject religion entirely has absolutely soared. According to data from the U.S. Census Bureau, the number of Americans with no religion has more than doubled between 1990 and 2008. Dave Olson, the director of church planning for the Evangelical Covenant Church, has made some very interesting projections regarding what is going to happen to church attendance in America if current trends continue. According to Olson, only 18.7% of all Americans regularly attend church right now. If this number continues to decline at the current rate, Olson says that the percentage of Americans attending church in 2050 will be about half of what it is today. According to a study done by Lifeway Research, membership in Southern Baptist churches will fall nearly 50% by the year 2050 if current trends persist. If you are a Christian, you should be quite alarmed by these numbers. But what is happening to the faith of our young people should be more alarming for Christians. According to a study, 15% of all Americans say they have no religion at all. That is up from 8% in 1990. That is quite a change. One recent survey found that 25% of all Americans between the ages of 18 and 29 say they have no religion at all. Large numbers of young Americans that went to church while they were growing up are now leaving the churches entirely. A recent study by the Barna Group discovered that nearly 60% of all Christians between the ages of 15 and 29 are no longer actively involved in any church. Just check out the results of one survey of young adults that was conducted by Lifeway Christian Resources. 65% rarely or never pray with others. 38% almost never pray by themselves. 65% rarely or never attend worship services of any kind. And 67% don't read the Bible or any other religious text on a regular basis. If this does not get turned around, churches all over America will be closing their doors. When the survey cited above first came out, the president of Lifeway Christian Resources stated that the millennial generation will see churches closing as quickly as GM dealerships. The reality is that they are also rejecting the fundamental principles of the Christian faith. One survey conducted by the Barna Group found that less than 1% of all Americans between the ages of 18 and 23 have a biblical worldview. The Barna Group asked participants in the survey if they agreed with the following statements: that absolute moral truth exists, that the Bible is completely accurate in all of its principles it teaches, that Satan is considered to be a real being or force, not merely symbolic, that a person cannot earn their way into heaven by trying to be good or by doing good works, that Jesus Christ lived a sinless life on earth, that God is the all-knowing, all-powerful creator of the world who still rules the universe today. Less than 1% of the participants agreed with all of those statements. For example, one survey found that 52% of all American Christians believe that at least some non-Christian faiths can lead to eternal life. Another survey found that 29% of all American Christians claim to have been in contact with the dead. 23% believe in astrology, and 22% believe in reincarnation. Without a doubt, the religious landscape of America is changing. The percentage of people who call themselves in some way Christian has dropped more than 11% in a generation. The faithful have scattered out of their traditional bases. The Bible Belt is less Baptist. The Rust Belt is less Catholic. And everywhere, more people are exploring spiritual frontiers or falling off of the faith map completely. These dramatic shifts in just 18 years are detailed in the New American Religious Identification Survey. It finds that despite growth and immigration that has added nearly 50 million adults to the U.S. population, almost all religious denominations have lost ground since their first survey in 1990. More than ever before, people are just making up their own stories of who they are. They say, I'm everything, I'm nothing, I believe in myself, says Barry Cosman, survey and co-author. Among the key findings in the 2008 survey are this. So many Americans claim no religion at all. Nones, N-O-N-E-S, 15% up from 8% in 1990. That category now outranks every other major U.S. religious group except Catholics and Baptists. In a nation that has long been mostly Christian, the challenge to Christianity does not come from other religions, but from a rejection of all forms of organized religion, the report concludes. Catholic strongholds in New England and the Midwest have faded as immigrants, retirees, and job seekers have moved to the Sun Belt. The Bible Belt is defined as a region stretching from West Virginia and Southern Virginia to southern Missouri, the north of Texas, and northern Florida in the south. The Rust Belt is located in the Great Lakes region and covers much of the American Midwest. The Sun Belt is a region in the United States that stretches across the southern and southwestern portions of the country from Florida to California. While bishops from the Midwest to Massachusetts close down or consolidate historic parishes, those in the South are scrambling to serve increasing numbers of worshipers. Baptists, 15.8% of those surveyed, are down from 19.3% in 1990. Mainline Protestant denominations, once socially dominant, have seen sharp declines. The percentage of Methodists, for example, has dropped from 8% to 5%. The percentage of those who chose a generic label calling themselves simply Christian, Protestant, non-denominational, evangelical, or born again, was 14.2%, about the same as it was in 1990. Jewish numbers showed a steady decline from 1.8% in 1990 to 1.2% today. The percentage of Muslims, while still slim, has doubled from 0.3% to 0.6%. Analysts within both groups, Jewish and Muslim, suggest those numbers understate the group's populations. The Pew Forum on Religion and Public Life released its Religious Landscape Survey based on 35,000 interviews, mapping Americans' beliefs state by state. It found that 41% of the people had switched their religion at some point in their life. The initial American Religious Identification Survey, ARIS, report in 1990 set the table for those surveys. It was based on 113,000 interviews, updates with 50,000 more in 2001 and 54,000 in 2008. Because the U.S. Census did not ask questions about religion, the ARIS survey was the first comprehensive study of how people identify their spiritual expression. The ARIS research also led in quantifying and planting a label on the nones, people who said none when asked the survey's basic question, what is your religious identity? The survey itself may have contributed to a higher rate of reporting as sociologists began analyzing the newly identified nones. The nones may have felt more free to step forward, less looked upon as outcasts after the ARIS results were published. Kesar says, Oregon once led the nation in nones, 18% in 1990, But in 2008, the leader with 34% was Vermont, where nuns significantly outnumber every other group. The argument that religion is declining has gained more attention in recent years, with major surveys pointing to the existence of a substantial group of Americans who state no preference for organized religion. These are the nuns. The single most significant trend in American religion from 1900 to the present has been the steady and spectacular decline in the percentage of religiously unaffiliated people in American population. J. Gordon Melton, founding director of the Institute for the Study of American Religion in Santa Barbara, California, wrote in a recent ARDA, Association of Religious Data Archives, paper on American religion megatrends in 1990, the religiously unaffiliated included some 65% of the population. Those indicators of decline taken from general social survey data include: from 1990 to 2008, the percentage of people who never attend religious services rose from 13% to 22%. Just 45% of adult respondents born after 1970 reported growing up with religiously active fathers. In the 60s, about 1% of college freshmen expected to become clergy. Now about 0.03% have that same expectation. The percentage of people saying they have a great deal of confidence in leaders of religious institutions has declined from 35% in the 1970s to about 25% today. America's so-called mainline Protestant churches aren't what they used to be. For generations on end, Methodists, Presbyterians, Congregationalists, Episcopalians, and kindred denominations reported net annual membership gains. As recently as the 1950s, their growth rate equaled or exceeded that of the United States as a whole. But in the early 1960s, their growth slowed. And after the middle of the decade, they had begun to lose members. With very few exceptions, the decline has continued to this date. Never before had any large religious body in this country lost members steadily for so many years. By the 1990s, these denominations had lost between 1/5 and 1/3 of the membership they claimed in 1965, and the proportion of Americans affiliated with them had reached a 20th century low. Many theories have been advanced to explain why these old denominations have fallen on hard times. The least credible theory attributes their decline to the secularizing efforts of industrialization, urbanization, and the spread of mass education. If secularization were the sole explanation, all but the most culturally insulated sectors of American religion would be losing members. But in fact, many sectors are holding their own very well, and others are growing. Biblically conservative, non-denominational Christian fellowships, for example, are among the fastest growing, and their typical location is not rural Appalachia, but in major metropolitan centers. To explain the decay of the mainline denominations, one must look instead for special factors at work within these churches themselves or in the lives of their constituents. Why is this happening? Why is the Christian church losing its mass appeal? Only about 18% of Americans attend any church regularly. That means 82% don't. From 2000 to 2005, overall church attendance declined in all 50 states, even when broken down into subsets of mainline Catholic and evangelical. Declines overwhelmed the infrequent small gains. This is the conclusion of Chapter 1, Part 2.